You know that feeling, don't you? That slight knot in your stomach when you're gearing up for, well, a tough conversation at work.
Hmm.
Maybe a deadline got missed, or a project you poured your soul into is suddenly getting shelved, or there's just a disagreement kind of brewing within the team.
Yeah, those moments.
Or perhaps you're steeling yourself for a big presentation, a crucial networking event, or even just trying to get your team genuinely excited about a new initiative. These moments, they're universal, right?
Absolutely. They happen to everyone.
But how you navigate them, especially in a global environment where, English is often the common language that can truly make all the difference, it shapes not just the outcome of that one interaction, but maybe your whole professional path.
It's absolutely true. And the stakes, they feel incredibly high when you're not just communicating, but also like meticulously navigating cultural nuances, all those unspoken rules, and making sure your message lands exactly as you intended.
Yeah.
It's a complex, sometimes beautiful dance where clarity, empathy, and adaptability become, well, your most valuable partners.
And that's exactly the dance we're mastering today. This deep dive is your personal shortcut, if you will, to understanding and applying those critical workplace communication skills. We've poured over a stack of your sources covering, gosh, everything from handling conflicts and persuading your colleagues to understanding diverse cultures, networking effectively, giving impactful feedback, and truly motivating your team. And we're here to abstract the absolute most potent nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Think of it as a carefully curated toolbox for your professional life.
Exactly.
A
Our
toolbox
mission today is really to help you cut through the noise, bypass the information overload, and arm you with strategies you can actually deploy immediately.
right now.
Yeah. We're going to break down essential frameworks, share some perhaps surprising facts, and provide truly actionable advice. Our goal is for you to walk away feeling more confident, knowing how to make your voice heard with impact, and building stronger, more authentic professional relationships in any English-speaking work environment. Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start with something that, let's be honest, is pretty much unavoidable, right? Workplace conflicts.
Like death and taxes.
Huh, exactly. They're pretty much part of the deal whenever people collaborate, especially when deadlines are looming and the pressure mounts. How you navigate these isn't just about resolving the immediate disagreement. It's a profound reflection on your professionalism. It showcases your ability to collaborate, your problem-solving skills, and, crucially, your ability to maintain respectful relationships, even when things get a bit tense.
And here's where it often gets really interesting for many of you listening. For non-native English speakers, there's often an added layer of complexity.
How so?
Well, it's not just about articulate speech. It's about being incredibly mindful of potential language barriers, those subtle cultural misunderstandings or even unspoken expectations that can easily escalate a simple disagreement in something much larger, or at least much more emotionally charged.
That's a vital point. It's so easy to just lump everything under the banner of conflict, but our research really highlights the importance of, well, dissecting what kind of conflict it actually is.
Right. Getting specific.
We found a very helpful categorization in your sources that helps us understand what's truly at play. So let's break that down, starting with what are called interpersonal conflicts. What are those all about?
Okay, so interpersonal conflicts are those direct clashes between individuals. They often stem from deep-seated personality differences, maybe fundamentally conflicting work styles, or sometimes just simple misinterpretations.
Okay.
Think about two team members who always seem to, butt heads because one prefers very direct, data-driven communication, while the other thrives on collaborative, consensus-building discussions.
I can picture that.
A classic example we saw in the sources was disagreement over who really deserves credit for a successful project. These are the kinds of conflicts that can become intensely emotional if they're not handled with care, precisely because they often feel so personal.
Oh, I've definitely seen those boil over. They can be incredibly draining for everyone involved.
They really can.
Then the sources mention task-related conflicts. Now, this sounds like it's more focused on the work itself, maybe less about personalities clashing.
Exactly. Task-related conflicts revolve around the very fabric of how the work actually gets done. The processes, the timelines, the allocation of individual responsibility.
Or the nitty-gritty.
Precisely. A classic example is when a team struggles to prioritize tasks effectively, leading to frustration, bottlenecks, and ultimately missed deadlines. Here, the friction is less about, personal animosity and more about different ideas, different methods, or maybe different priorities for reaching the same shared goals. It's about the what and how of the work, not personal grudges.
That distinction is incredibly important, I think. It changes how you approach resolving it. And the final category for us to consider.
The last category our sources highlighted is leadership conflicts. This one is, well, pretty self-explanatory. It involves tensions that arise directly between employees and their managers, or really anyone in a position of authority.
Okay.
This could manifest as disagreements about strategic decisions, maybe the appropriate level of supervision, or even differing opinions about the overall direction of a project or the team.
Like feeling micromanaged.
That is a very common scenario described in the sources, an employee feeling micromanaged. That can quickly erode trust and morale, sparking significant, often unspoken conflict.
So we've got these different types of conflicts: interpersonal, task-related, leadership. But as our sources stress, simply categorizing them isn't quite enough. We need to dig deeper into the root causes of disagreements.
Absolutely.
What are some of those fundamental culprits that often fuel these workplace tensions, maybe even before they become full-blown conflicts?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, and I think often overlooked, is how many of these causes really just boil down to a basic lack of clarity or alignment. Poor communication is a colossal one. If people aren't expressing themselves clearly or, crucially, if they aren't actively listening, misunderstandings are absolutely bound to pop up. It's almost inevitable.
Right. It's amazing how often that happens.
Then you have unclear roles and responsibilities, another major culprit. When individuals aren't certain what they're supposed to be doing, or where their job ends and someone else's begins, it inevitably leads to overlap, resentment, sometimes turf wars, and conflict.
Makes sense.
Competing priorities, whether within a single team or between different departments, can create significant friction that's often misdiagnosed as personal animosity when it's really systemic.
Ah, interesting.
And of course, as we'll dive into later, cultural differences in communication styles and expectations play a huge, often invisible role. And finally, we really cannot underestimate the insidious impact of stress and heavy workloads. When people are feeling overwhelmed and under pressure, they're simply more likely to be short-tempered, less patient, and, frankly, prone to misinterpreting intentions.
It's interesting how many of those causes, like you said, boil down to a lack of clarity or alignment. I particularly liked the analogy from our sources.
Which one was that?
It compared recognizing the type of conflict and its root causes to a skilled physician accurately diagnosing a medical condition before prescribing treatment. You wouldn't just treat a headache without knowing if it's stress or, something more serious.
Before you say, that's a great analogy. It allows you to target your approach effectively, addressing the underlying problems rather than just sort of futilely dealing with the symptoms over and over again.
Right.
This is why a truly professional approach to conflict isn't just a nicety. It's absolutely critical for effective resolution.
So let's talk about that. What does it truly mean to embody professionalism in the context of a workplace disagreement? Our sources really emphasize that professionalism is key in conflict resolution. It's not about avoiding conflict entirely, because that's impossible, but about how you engage with it.
Indeed. Professionalism in conflict resolution is fundamentally about managing disagreements respectfully, constructively, and crucially, without those emotional outbursts.
Keeping your cool.
Exactly. It's about consciously keeping your cool, focusing on a positive, productive outcome instead of making things worse or devolving into finger-pointing. Our research breaks this down into several absolutely vital aspects.
Let's start with remaining calm, which I know can feel like, well, an almost impossible feat sometimes, especially when you feel strongly about something or feel unjustly attacked.
It certainly can be, especially if you're passionate about your viewpoint or feel unfairly treated. But what we found is that it's so important to consciously avoid raising your voice, using aggressive language, or allowing your emotions to hijack the conversation.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, definitely. But staying calm instantly de-escalates the situation and creates an environment where a rational discussion is even possible. The sources even suggest practical things like taking deep breaths, or if things get too heated, simply suggesting a short agreed-upon break.
Like a timeout.
Yeah, exactly. You can calmly say, you know what, let's take 10 minutes to cool down and then come back to this with fresh perspectives. This simple pause can completely reset the dynamic of a tense conversation.
That makes a lot of sense, taking that emotional temperature down before you say something you might regret. What about being objective? How do we try to set aside our personal feelings when the tension is really palpable?
Being objective is about focusing relentlessly on the facts, the data, the observable behaviors, and not letting your emotions or inherent biases cloud your judgment.
Okay.
You need to try and analyze the situation from as neutral a perspective as possible, consider all available evidence, and rigorously resist the urge to make assumptions or take things personally. It's tough, yes, but absolutely vital for a fair resolution.
Any tricks for that?
Well, a powerful, if maybe counterintuitive way the sources suggest to combat confirmation bias, where we only look for evidence that supports our existing view, is to actively seek out and genuinely consider the strongest argument against your own position.
Wow, that's challenging.
It is. But it forces you to step outside your own perspective and see the bigger picture, maybe even find some validity in the other viewpoint.
That's a really helpful tip. It forces you to genuinely engage with the other side. Another key aspect of professionalism mentioned is respecting differences. This feels particularly important in our diverse, global workplaces.
Absolutely, and it is especially crucial today. You simply have to acknowledge that people have inherently different opinions, distinct perspectives, and even fundamentally different communication styles, often rooted in their cultures.
Right.
Even if you fundamentally disagree with someone's conclusion, you can still respect their right to hold that opinion and engage them in respectful conversation. This is precisely where cultural sensitivity, which we'll explore in depth later, truly comes into play. It can turn potential clashes into opportunities for greater understanding.
And finally, professionalism and conflict resolution means seeking solutions. It's not just about winning an argument or being right, is it?
Not at all. The overarching goal should always be to find a solution everyone can genuinely agree on or at least live with. A compromise where everyone feels like their core concerns have been heard, understood, and addressed.
Finding that middle ground.
Exactly. It's about working together to solve the problem at hand, rather than competing against each other to be right. This collaborative mindset shifts the entire dynamic from adversarial to cooperative. It's about we, not me versus you.
Got it. So we've got this robust foundation of professionalism. Stay calm, be objective, respect differences, seek solutions. Now let's get to the truly practical stuff. The essential communication skills for resolution. Our sources really stress the transformative power of active listening. What does that actually involve in the heat of a conflict?
Active listening, yeah, it's so much more than just silently hearing words while you're planning your rebuttal.
We've all done that.
We have. It's about intensely focusing on the entire message. The words, the tone, the body language, striving to understand the other person's perspective, responding thoughtfully to genuinely show you understand, and actually remembering what they've said.
So it's about showing you value their input.
Absolutely. When you actively listen in a conflict, you're not just gathering information, you're profoundly signaling to the other person that you value their opinion, that you're making a real effort to see things from their side. Our research highlighted some key do's and don'ts that can make or break this.
Okay, tell us some of the key do's. Active listening sounds simple, but I imagine it involves more than just not talking, right? What are some concrete actions?
One of the most powerful do's, even for experienced communicators, is paraphrasing. It's not just repeating like a parrot. It's about translating what you heard into your own words to truly confirm understanding.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Saying something like, okay, so just to make sure I've got this right, what I'm hearing you say is, you're concerned the timeline for the Q4 launch is too aggressive because we haven't factored in potential QA delays. Is that correct? That simple act not only prevents misinterpretations, but it also signals profound respect. It shows you are really listening.
That makes sense. And the don'ts?
The big ones are interrupting, obviously, or perhaps even more subtly damaging, planning your response while the other person is still talking. We're all guilty of that sometimes. Active listening means being fully present, giving them your undivided attention. Turn off the internal monologue for a minute.
That takes discipline. Another key communication skill we uncovered is assertive communication. How is that different from being aggressive, and why is it so vital in conflict?
That's a great question, because they often get confused. Assertive communication is about expressing your needs, your opinions, and your feelings directly and respectfully, without veering into aggression, but also without shrinking into passivity.
Finding that balance.
Exactly. It's about standing up for yourself and your position, while simultaneously respecting the other person's perspective and right to their own view. The sources really champion the use of I statements, which are an incredibly powerful tool here.
Ah, yes, I statements. Why are they so important, especially when navigating difficult conversations?
Because I statements allow you to express your feelings and observations from your own perspective without directly blaming the other person. By focusing on how you feel or what you observe, rather than accusing them of doing something wrong, you're far less likely to trigger defensiveness.
Okay.
And you're much more likely to foster a productive, open conversation. For example, instead of saying, you never listen to my ideas, that's why this project is failing, which is highly accusatory.
Right, puts them on the defensive immediately.
Immediately. You could say, I feel like my suggestions aren't being fully considered in our planning meetings, and I'm getting concerned about our project timeline. Can we talk about how we might integrate diverse input more effectively moving forward? It's a subtle but profoundly impactful shift in framing. It opens a door rather than slamming it shut.
Absolutely. It invites collaboration. Our research also highlights the immense power of nonverbal communication. We often focus so much on the words themselves, but our body language and tone of voice can communicate just as much, sometimes even more, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. Your body language, your facial expressions, your tone, they can completely undermine or reinforce your words.
You mentioned some funny examples earlier, like the thumbs up.
Ah, yes. The thumbs up so positive in the US and Europe, right?
That-
But try it in parts of the Middle East or Latin America, and you might accidentally be delivering a fairly offensive message. Or, nodding means yes almost everywhere, but in Bulgaria, it means no. It's like a silent cultural minefield sometimes. Our sources emphasize maintaining appropriate eye contact. You want to show you're engaged, but not stare someone down, especially in cultures where prolonged direct eye contact can feel aggressive or disrespectful.
Right.
An open posture, like keeping your arms uncrossed, makes you appear more approachable and receptive, and your tone of voice is utterly crucial. Even if your words are perfectly neutral, a sarcastic or aggressive tone can escalate things instantly. Aim for a calm, even, neutral, and respectful tone.
That's fascinating and a potent reminder that communication is so much more than just the words we choose. Okay, so we've covered the key communication skills: active listening, assertive communication, nonverbal awareness. Now, let's talk about a more structured approach. We found a very practical 5-step conflict resolution strategy that can serve as a roadmap. What's step 1?
Step 1, perhaps unsurprisingly, is to stay calm and composed. This isn't just, fluffy advice, it's foundational. As we discussed, if you can't keep your own emotions in check, the situation is pretty much guaranteed to spiral.
So back to those deep breaths.
Back to the deep breaths, or even calling for that brief time out. If you find yourself clenching your jaw, speaking faster, feeling flushed, those are clear signals to pause before you proceed.
Okay, good advice. And what's step 2 in this roadmap?
Step 2 is to identify the root cause. You absolutely need to go beyond the immediate surface-level disagreement to understand what's really driving the tension underneath.
Like peeling an onion.
Exactly like peeling an onion. This often involves asking open-ended, clarifying questions like, can you help me understand what specifically bothered you about that decision? Or what underlying concerns do you have about this approach? This helps uncover the real issues and ensures you're addressing the fundamental problem, not just batting away the symptoms. It's the difference between putting a bandage on a wound and actually treating the infection.
Makes perfect sense. Step 3 is to use neutral language. This seems related to I statements, but maybe broader.
Absolutely. Neutral language is a powerful de-escalation tool that goes beyond just I statements.
Yeah.
It helps lower tension across the board and prevents people from becoming defensive.
How so?
Our research advises staying away from absolute, often accusatory words like always and never, as they tend to exaggerate the situation and instantly make the other person feel attacked and want to argue the specifics.
Like, you'll always miss the deadline.
Right. Instead of that, try something more neutral and behavior-focused, like, I've noticed that the last few deadlines have been missed. Can we talk about what might be causing the delays and find a way to get back on track? See the difference? It focuses on specific, observable behavior without making a sweeping, judgmental statement.
That's a much more constructive way to approach it. Moving on to step 4, find common ground. How do we do that when we're in the middle of a disagreement, when it really feels like you're on completely opposite sides?
It can feel tough, but finding common ground means actively searching for those shared goals or objectives that you and the other person can both genuinely agree on. Even in conflict, there's usually something.
Like the project's success.
Exactly. This is where you remind yourselves and each other that despite the current disagreement, You're ultimately working towards a shared outcome. When you highlight those shared interests, it instantly creates a sense of collaboration and reminds everyone of the bigger picture. For instance, you could say, look, we both want this project to be successful and delivered on time. That's our shared goal. How can we align our different approaches to make that happen most effectively? That shifts the focus away from the immediate conflict point and towards a shared, positive objective.
Love that reframing. And finally, step 5, agree on a solution. This is where we put the plan into action, right? Where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, this is the crucial step where you move from discussion and understanding to decisive action. You need to collaboratively decide on specific, actionable steps to not only resolve the current conflict, but also, ideally, to prevent it from happening again.
So not just fixing it now, but fixing it for the future, too.
Exactly. It's about coming up with concrete, measurable actions that address the root cause and ensure forward momentum. Our sources suggest being incredibly specific, making sure everyone clearly understands the agreed-upon solution, and ideally, documenting it briefly, maybe in a follow-up email. For example, okay, so moving forward, let's implement a weekly 15-minute check-in, maybe every Monday morning, specifically dedicated to aligning on task priorities to make sure we're all on the same page and avoid future miscommunications. Does that work?
This 5-step approach seems incredibly useful, like a structured way to navigate those choppy waters. Our research also delves into some common conflict scenarios and applying strategies. Let's take one. Say you have a disagreement with a colleague who maybe habitually shoots down your ideas in meetings. How can we use these techniques there?
Okay, that's a common frustration. In that situation, assertive communication coupled with active listening is absolutely key. Instead of getting defensive or just withdrawing, you could try saying something like, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Could you elaborate a bit on why you prefer a different approach, or maybe what specific concerns you have with my suggestion? I'd like to understand better so we can discuss the pros and cons of both ideas thoroughly.
So you're validating them first.
Exactly. That opens up a dialogue, shows you value their opinion, even if you disagree, while also making it clear that you expect your ideas to be heard and fairly evaluated. Then, you actively listen to their response, look for areas where you might genuinely agree, or find a way to integrate parts of both ideas.
What about miscommunication with a manager? That can be particularly tricky given the power dynamics involved.
It definitely can be more delicate. Our sources highlight a scenario where, say, unclear instructions from a manager lead to mistakes. In this case, the focus should be less on assigning blame and much more on preventing future miscommunications.
How would you phrase that?
You could professionally say something like, to ensure I fully understand the requirements for future tasks like this one, and avoid any potential misunderstandings, would it be possible for us to perhaps clarify the key expectations in writing after our discussions? Maybe just a brief summary email confirming the main points. That's a professional way to suggest a practical, mutually beneficial solution without directly blaming anyone. It actually makes you look proactive.
That's smart. And what about those dreaded team conflicts in meetings? You know, the loud arguments that disrupt everything and derail productivity? How do you handle that?
Yeah, this can really poison the atmosphere. A neutral, firm, and direct approach is usually best here. As a leader, or even as a team member, you can step in and say something like, okay, let's pause here for a moment. I see we have some strong opinions being shared, which is valuable, but let's try to bring the focus back to the issue at hand. What are the main points of disagreement here, and what are some concrete solutions we can explore together to move forward constructively?
Gently redirecting.
Exactly. You're gently but firmly steering the conversation away from personal attacks and back towards collaborative problem solving, subtly reminding everyone of the professional expectations for the meeting.
And then there's the often high-stakes situation of dealing with a difficult client who is, understandably, upset about delays or missed expectations. How do you navigate that highly charged situation?
Oof, yes. Client conflicts need careful handling. First, you absolutely must acknowledge their frustration and offer a sincere, unreserved apology for the inconvenience or the mistake. For example, I completely understand your disappointment and frustration with the delay on Project Alpha, and I sincerely apologize for the impact this has had on your team's timeline.
Start with empathy and ownership.
Absolutely. That immediately shows empathy and takes responsibility. Then and only then is it crucial to clearly explain what you're actively doing to fix the situation and, critically, what preventative steps you're taking to ensure it won't happen again. So you follow up with, Here's the revised timeline, which we're fully committed to hitting, and these are the specific process changes we've implemented internally to make sure we stay rigorously on track going forward. This demonstrates responsibility, transparency, and a concrete commitment to making things right.
These examples are so incredibly helpful, really moving the advice from theory into practical application. Now, our research also raises an important point about when to escalate conflict. It's not always appropriate to handle everything yourself, right?
Hmm.
What are the clear signs that we need to get someone else involved?
That's a really important boundary.
Hmm.
Our sources are very clear on this. There are two main situations where escalation is not just an option, but an absolute necessity.
Okay, what's the first?
One, if the conflict involves any form of harassment, discrimination, bullying, or any unethical behavior, that needs to be reported to HR or management immediately and without hesitation. There's zero room for trying to resolve that personally.
Absolutely non-negotiable. And the second,
The second situation is if you've genuinely made a concerted good faith effort to resolve the conflict yourself using the strategies we've discussed, but you've simply hit a wall. You're at a genuine impasse, the situation isn't improving, and it's actively harming productivity, morale, or the project.
so if you've tried and failed, basically.
If you've tried reasonably and constructively, yes.
So if we reach that point, how do we escalate professionally? We don't want to seem like we're just, running to the boss or HR for every little disagreement.
You're absolutely right. The how matters a lot. When you do decide to escalate, it's crucial to be calm, objective, and stick rigorously to the facts. Do not engage in blame, gossip, or emotional exaggeration.
Keep it factual.
Exactly. Our research suggests phrasing it something like this. I've made several attempts to resolve an ongoing issue directly with person's name regarding briefly describe the specific behavior or situation, example, project deadline adherence, but we seem to be at an impasse, and it's starting to impact mention the project or team objective. Could HR or perhaps our manager help us mediate this to find a constructive path forward? That frames it clearly, focuses on the business impact, and suggests a constructive solution like mediation, rather than just complaining.
That seems very professional and solution-oriented. Finally, before we move on from conflict, what about preventative strategies? How do we try to stop these conflicts before they even ignite, creating a more harmonious environment from the outset?
Prevention is always better than cure, right? Building strong, genuine relationships among colleagues is paramount. Things like informal small talk, team-building activities, grabbing coffee, just getting to know each other as people that helps build trust and understanding, making conflict less likely to escalate because there's a foundation of goodwill.
Makes sense. What else?
Setting crystal clear expectations from the start. Explicitly defining roles, responsibilities, communication norms, and deadlines can prevent a vast number of misunderstandings that often fuel conflict. Clarity is key,
Clarity again.
always. And critically, encouraging open and psychologically safe communication through things like regular feedback mechanisms, open-door policies, and opportunities for constructive dialogue can help address minor issues and tensions before they fester and blow up into major problems. It's about catching those small sparks before they turn into a wildfire.
Those are all really positive, proactive steps that can truly transform a workplace culture. This has been such an insightful deep dive into navigating conflict effectively.
I completely agree. It's clear that learning how to handle workplace conflicts professionally, especially when communicating in English within a global context, isn't just a useful skill, it's an indispensable one. It can profoundly impact your career trajectory and, honestly, the well-being of your entire team.
What an amazing way to frame it. Okay, let's shift gears now. We've spent a good deal of time learning how to navigate disagreements and resolve conflict, but what about proactively shaping the narrative, driving your ideas forward, and getting genuine buy-in from others?
Moving from defense to offense in a manner of speaking.
Exactly. That requires a different kind of finesse, doesn't it? Let's now pivot from de-escalation to the art of mastering persuasive speaking in meetings. This is a skill that transforms mere information sharing into genuine influence and impact. And it doesn't matter if it's a quick team check-in or a big formal presentation. Getting people on board with your ideas is, well, a secret weapon in any job.
This is where it gets really interesting because our research shows this isn't just about language proficiency or being articulate. It's about understanding the fundamental psychology of how humans are persuaded.
So not just smooth talking.
Not at all. What's often misunderstood is that real ethical persuasion isn't about tricking or manipulating people. It's about ethical influence, building trust, creating a shared vision and demonstrating value so genuinely that your audience wants to follow your lead. It's about aligning interests, not overpowering them.
Right. And our sources draw deeply from, well, ancient rhetoric, talking about the three pillars of persuasion: ethos, pathos, and logos. These sound academic, but for someone prepping for a critical meeting, what do these actually look like in practice?
Great question. So ethos is your credibility. This isn't just about your job title. It's about being meticulously prepared, having truly done your homework, knowing your stuff inside out, and articulating your points clearly and
Showing
concisely.
you're reliable.
Exactly. You show up having deeply invested time and thought into your topic, which immediately signals respect for your audience's time and intelligence. It's the silent assurance that you're trustworthy and competent.
Okay, that's ethos. What about pathos?
Pathos is about skillfully tapping into your audience's emotions and concerns. You frame your message to vividly illustrate how it impacts their goals, solves their specific problems, or taps into their aspirations and values. You want to make them feel the relevance and urgency of your proposal, not just intellectually understand the facts. It's about connecting on a human level.
Connecting to their why.
Precisely. And logos is the bedrock of logic. It's having the undeniable evidence to back up your claims, robust data, compelling case studies, credible expert opinions, sound reasoning. This is where your facts and figures provide the concrete, rational foundation for your entire argument. You need all three working together for maximum impact.
I think that's so important because you can have the most logical argument in the world, the most impeccable data logos, but if people don't trust you, ethos, or if they don't see the personal relevance or connect with the why behind it, pathos, you're simply not going to persuade them.
Exactly. Work in concert.
And speaking of being prepared, our research